April 30th, 1945, shortly after 3 in the afternoon. In the secret bunker under the Reich Chancellery building in Berlin, the last moments of Adolf Hitler's life are ticking away. When he learns that the Red Army will control the entire city by evening, he says goodbye to his former staff, poisons his favorite dog, Blondie, and along with his new wife, Eva Braun, locks himself in his room. They sit on the sofa next to each other. She bites into a cyanide capsule, and he shoots himself in the temple with a pistol. Thus ends the twisted dream that one superior nation would dominate all others and even exterminate the least valuable from the face of the earth. But the questions of how this could ever have happened and who exactly is the one who unleashed it all remain to this day. Adolf Hitler. He did not have a happy childhood. He was born in 1889 in the Austrian town of Braunau am Inn. His father, Alois, was an alcoholic and a tyrant who beat the family. Adolf later suffered from a lifelong aversion to alcohol. Fortunately, his father died early. Hitler loved his mother, Clara, but she also sadly died of breast cancer soon after. Adolf took her death in great pain extremely hard. The attending doctor recalled never having seen such great grief in a bereaved person during his career, but the blows of fate would continue. Hitler dreamed his entire childhood of becoming a painter, but the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts rejected him twice. He could allegedly draw buildings well, but his figure painting was inadequate. At 18, he thus sank to the deepest depths, and the inability to cope with life's failures would then accompany him throughout his life. For the next 5 years, he is essentially homeless in Vienna. He earns a little extra money by painting posters or postcards and constantly thinks hard about who is to blame. Thus, he gets his first taste of the pervasive anti-Semitism that was then being fanned by the long-serving Viennese mayor Karl Lueger. He thundered that Jews, as owners of newspapers and key businesses, controlled the world, and he was immensely popular with his program. Hitler finally leaves Vienna at 22, seeing it as a rotten city full of Jews and Marxists, and moves to Munich. He feels better here, as he has greatly admired German history and mythology for some time. When World War I breaks out, as we can see in this unique footage, he is enthusiastic and immediately volunteers for the German army. Here, perhaps for the first time, he is happy. He gets the role of a field courier, delivering orders in the trenches, and experiences a relatively peaceful war, except for its very end, when his trench is hit by poisonous mustard gas, and he is almost blinded. In a military hospital in Pomerania, a turning point then arrives. Here, Hitler learns of the German surrender. He cannot understand it. Such a great and proud nation surely cannot lose. Who is to blame? In Hitler's eyes, it is clear. The Jews and Marxists in the Berlin government betrayed them. And it is precisely here that he resolves once and for all to restore pride to the Germans and take revenge on everyone else. A year later, he joins the tiny German Workers' Party with the acronym DAP. It has no more than 50 members, but Hitler, who is endowed with extraordinary oratorical talent, soon becomes its chairman. In 1920, he adds National Socialist before its name, changing the acronym to NSDAP, and he himself designs its symbol, the hooked cross, the swastika, which is an old religious symbol, but now they interpret it here as a symbol of the superiority of the Aryan race. He also creates street fighting units, called the SA, and in November 1923, he feels strong enough to seize power in Munich with a coup. That action gets the derisive name Beer Hall Putsch because it started in the Munich Bürgerbräukeller, but it ends in a fiasco. The procession of Nazis is fired upon by Bavarian police, 23 are dead, and Hitler is arrested and sentenced to 5 years in prison for treason. In prison, he then writes his political manifesto, a pamphlet known here as Mein Kampf, My Struggle. In it, he openly promotes racism, anti-Semitism, and the leading role of the Aryan race. After a year, he is released for good behavior. It is then that he also finally decides that next time he will seize power only through legal means, through elections. The following years, he thus prepares with extraordinary persistence. He gets advice on changing his wardrobe. He experiments with which gestures look best in photos and footage. He learns etiquette because he doesn't even know how to properly hold cutlery. He hones party speeches and rallies into the form of captivating theatrical performances. And then the Great Depression, triggered by Black Friday on the New York Stock Exchange, plays into his hands. Hitler doesn't hesitate. He promises the impoverished Germans absolutely everything. And moreover, unlike his hesitant conservative opponents, he looks energetic and modern because, for example, he flies to election rallies by plane to get to as many of them as possible. In the 1930 elections, the Nazis get 18% of the votes. In 1932, even 37%, and they become the strongest German party with 14 million voters.
Ich habe die Energie und die Zähigkeit gehabt, von den damaligen 1000 Mann vor 10 Jahren bis heute 14 Millionen zu machen.
In January 1933, Hitler becomes German Chancellor. The old President von Hindenburg appoints him only out of the conviction that this talkative Austrian corporal, as he derisively calls him, won't last long in his position. Perhaps they are betting on him, but they were sorely mistaken. Just under a month later, when the Reichstag building in Berlin is set on fire, Hitler immediately blames the communists, his main opponents, and begins their arrests. He convinces the old Hindenburg that the country is on the verge of civil war. Hindenburg issues a decree limiting personal freedoms, thus entrusting all power to the government, that is, to the Chancellor. And the Chancellor acts. In March, the ban on the Communist Party. In April, the beginning of the removal of Jews from leadership positions. In May and July, the dissolution of other political parties. In June of the following year, with a bloody action known as the Night of the Long Knives, he gets rid of the opposition within his own party. And after the old president also dies in August 1934, Hitler merges the presidential and chancellor's functions into one, which he will call Führer, Reich leader. 20 years ago, he was a homeless man in Vienna, and now he is the absolute ruler of Germany. And what is completely insane is that the economy is recovering again, and the fanaticized Germans absolutely love him for the most part. He himself lives in a 9-room apartment in Berlin or at his new residence, the Berghof in the Alps near Berchtesgaden. He refuses to marry because he says he wouldn't be able to devote himself to serving Germany, but even though there is speculation about his sexuality, some women did pass through his life. They are all similar. They are 20 years younger, naive and devoted beauties who don't ask questions and don't cause problems. The last of them, Eva Braun, stays with him from 1936 until his death. It is around 1936 that Hitler plans his expansion. He reached an almost mystical realization that he is the one who will expand the Germans' living space, the so-called Lebensraum, through a grandiose war in which there can only be total victory or total destruction. The subsequent events are well known. The occupation of Austria, the dismemberment of Czechoslovakia, the attack on Poland. The fateful war begins. In it, Hitler fully opens all the floodgates of his twisted ideas about so-called racial hygiene of society. Already in 1939, he begins the systematic murder of mentally disabled Germans in psychiatric hospitals. However, because this action, called T4, encounters stormy public opposition, Hitler decides that all others must take place in the East, out of sight of German public opinion, and in complete secrecy, without official orders and documents. Indeed, even though it is absolutely clear that all plans for the extermination of Jews and others originate from Hitler's mind, he himself is not signed under a single document. He was never in any extermination camp, and he did not even personally participate in any execution. In the beginning, everything goes according to plan. Hitler, who had only reached the rank of private first class in the First World War, thus gets the impression that he is a phenomenal military leader. He essentially decides everything himself, down to the most bizarre details, for example, how many cannons should be where. This gets stuck after the attack on the Soviet Union. After the key defeats at Stalingrad and Kursk, he shouts at his generals that they are worse than Jews and falls into total apathy, as he did during earlier failures. Furthermore, his health worsens due to stress. He has stomach problems, severe rashes, polyps on his vocal cords from constant shouting, and also a panic fear of cancer, from which his mother died. He took a complete cocktail of medications. Historians later counted from 70 of them, including cocaine, amphetamines, and other drugs that slowly turned him into a complete wreck. At the end of the war, when the Allies are crushing Germany from both sides, Hitler's story reaches a paradoxical end. He, the greatest idol and leader of the Germans, completely betrays his nation. If they are unable to defeat the Slavs, he says, they deserve death. And so he forbids capitulation even in completely lost battles, declares a scorched earth policy where power plants and dams that are still functioning are to be destroyed before the Allies, and ultimately throws even old men and children into the hopeless fight. This is his last film footage from March 20th, 1945. With a heavily trembling hand, he thanks the boys from the Hitler Youth for the defense of Berlin and sends them into further battles to certain death. He himself locks himself in his bunker under the Chancellery, and here his twisted dream ends for good.